Hi, I'm Michelle with the Garrett Public Library, and I am doing January's Railroader reading. I'm going to be reading something from Chicken Soup for the Cat and Dog Lover's Soul. I hope everybody's having a good new year. I have a new grandbaby, a little grandson, so that is starting my year off. It's just wonderful. Okay, let's get started. My story tonight is called Wheelie Willie. The dog in the cardboard box was incredibly tiny. Someone had brought him, box and all, into the vet's office. They had found him on Melrose, they said. Just one more unwanted animal in Los Angeles. But this one, a full-grown Chihuahua, was unusual in two respects. Someone had gone to the trouble and expense of ensuring this dog would be a quiet pet by having his vocal cords surgically severed. Plus, the poor little guy had recently been in an accident of some sort because he was paralyzed from behind his front legs all the way to his tail. But the dog had a good disposition and wasn't in pain, so the vet decided to see if he could find a home for him. For a year, the Chihuahua waited. No one was willing to take on the burden of a special needs pet. But right about then, Deborah Turner heard about the unfortunate dog. Haunted by the story, she came to look. The first moment she laid eyes on him, something in his face moved her deeply, and it seemed the feeling was mutual. She picked up the 2-pound dog and held him to her heart. He was underdeveloped from lack of exercise and strangely mute. But his eyes said it all. I will love you with everything I have and more. When Deborah's boyfriend saw her new dog, he was doubtful. What are you going to do, carry that dog everywhere? He asked her. If I have to, Deborah answered. She had named the Chihuahua Willie, and he seemed thrilled with everything she'd offered him. He squirmed with delight when she fed him. He sighed luxuriously when set in his new soft dog basket. He played enthusiastically with the toys she gave him. When she walked into the room, Willie pranced, lifting his front feet one at a time in an eager dance of greeting. He especially loved Deborah's cat, Stevie, and rolled over trying to get as close to the large silver Persian as he could. Sometimes he tried to walk, dragging his back legs behind him, but the weight of his hindquarters was too much for his tiny front legs. Deborah's boyfriend had an idea. He bought 3 large helium balloons and tied them to Willie's hip area, hoping it would lighten the load. But Willie was so small, the balloons lifted his front legs off the ground as well. He hung for a moment, suspended with his back end higher than his front end, before they could take the balloons off of him. He didn't seem disturbed, just curious. Deborah could see that her dog was an exceptionally patient and trusting creature. They tied the balloons to 3 of his toys, and Willie batted at them with his front paws. Now this was a great game. Not long after the balloon experiment, Deborah read about a wheelchair for disabled pets called the Canine Cart. She ordered one, and when it arrived, she was excited to try it on Willie. It was delivered to the pet store where Deborah worked. She always brought Willie to work with her, and so she immediately strapped him into the contraption and laid his back legs and rests built over the wheels. The instructions had warned her that sometimes an animal could be initially scared of the cart and refuse to take a step, but Willie took off like an airplane. For a full half an hour, the little dog raced around and around the store. Finally, free of the limitations he had so patiently endured, Willie's spirit soared, and now his body could keep pace with his joy. From that moment, there was no stopping Willie. Deborah began taking him to the local hospital, to the Starlight Room, where children who were ill as a result of accidents or disease, some in wheelchairs, some sitting in red wagons, with their life support machines beside them, where they would receive visitors. When Willie first arrived, the children were wide-eyed with wonder. A dog! In a wheelchair! Just like us! It was hard to say who was more excited, the children or Willie. Soon, Willie was visiting schools, convalescent homes, and senior centers on a regular basis. LA reporters wrote stories, took pictures, and filmed interviews about Wheelie Willie. Deborah's dog was a local celebrity. One day, Deborah was doing errands. Willie rolling along right by her side without a leash when a woman stopped them. "Is that Wheelie Willie?" she cried. "I saw you on TV. Your dog saved my life." Deborah was used to people making a fuss over Willie, but this was a first. "Saved your life?" The woman explained. "Not long ago, I lost my job of many years. I felt helpless, betrayed, and hopeless. I was sure I would never be able to find another job. I stopped bathing. I stopped going out, except to buy junk food. I guess I just stopped caring. Day after day, all I did was sit in front of the TV. Then I saw you on a talk show. You were talking about Willie, about this little dog in a wheelchair. You said dogs don't feel sorry for themselves. They do what they have to do to get what they want. Before Willie got his wheelchair, if he was across the room from me, he didn't collapse in a heap and whine, 'Oh, I want to go over there, but I can't.' He gladly did whatever he could to make his way to me. No question, he'd just do it with everything he had." The woman continued, "It was like waking up. I looked at myself and said, 'What are you doing?' Then I took a shower, wrote a resume, and went out to look for a job. I got the first job I interviewed for, and I love it, and it's all because of Willie." She bent over and petted her unlikely hero. Willie, as usual, jigged back and forth on his front legs, signaling his delight at meeting another friend. That same year at the LA Marathon, this plucky Chihuahua led a group of people with spinal cord injuries. Moving along in front of the humans in wheelchairs, the small dog towed his own two-wheeled vehicle, which bore a heart-shaped sign that read Wheelie Willie. Their official mascot, red straps bright across his muscular chest, was stepping high as he pulled his cart over the finish line to the sound of thundering applause. This was a story from Deborah Turner as told to Carol Klein. And I've got time for another story. I'm kind of on these chicken soup books, but next month I'm going to try to find something different to read. But this one is from Chicken Soup for the Soul at Work. This one's called Wednesday Mornings with Elvis. I have worked as a cleaning lady for 14 years. One of my favorite customers of all time was old Mrs. Avadasian. She was wiry like a spring and seemed to bounce constantly, her white bun flying this way and that. I'm not sure how old she was, but I do know she buried the last of her 6 children a few years ago, all of whom had been on Social Security for some time. I knew something else about Mrs. Avadasian that no one in her family, not even her 6 children or any of her friends, ever knew. It was our little secret. Mrs. Avadasian was crazy about Elvis. That discovery came quite by surprise one morning when I caught her hiding something behind her back as I walked into the room. "Oh my," she stammered, backing away. We stood facing each other for what seemed like a long time. Her eyes looked this way and that, then tentatively into mine, testing my loyalty and searching for camaraderie. She found it and her face lit up. She decided to share her special secret with me. Out came the secret in living color. Well, that is, in faded living color. Elvis himself, smiling up at both of us from a 1956 teen magazine with that "I am the king and I am one smoking dude" grin. I looked at Mrs. Avadasian. Her face was flushed. Every Wednesday after that, the king came to Mrs. Avadasian's house for a personal visit. At exactly 9 a.m., I'd haul my cleaning stuff over to her tottering Victorian home, and there she'd be, pacing nervously back and forth near the front window. She'd be dressed to the nines in her white applique organza wedding dress, a single strand of tinted pearls, and pink satin slippers. It was also the morning her hair came down. Pin by pin, she would loosen her bun until silky silver tendrils drifted down, framing her face. Her face was an explosion of color against old bleached canvas, pearly pink, iridescent lips, magenta eyeshadow placed in the general vicinity of her lids, and tomato red cheeks. She would wait in the parlor, and then, my cleaning done, I'd march right over to the old Victrola, reach into my cleaning bag, and pull out our new treasure, a somewhat scratchy but perfectly usable copy of Elvis's Greatest Hits that I fought for and won at a yard sale. I would walk over to Mrs. Avadasian, take her tiny hand, bow, and lead her onto the dance floor. After a measure or two, Elvis would join us from the Victrola in the corner, and there on the beat of 3 we would all get crazy. There was Elvis bebopping about his burnin' love, and Mrs. Avadacian in her white organza wedding dress, flapping and flipping and tripping everywhere but loose, her pink satin slippers burning up the rug. We were all shook up, yelling and yelping and jumping up and down. When we thought we couldn't take for one more minute, Elvis turned up the pace with Jailhouse Rock. He was relentless. He exhausted us. We begged him, "Please, Elvis, don't be cruel." Sorry. For the grand finale, Elvis serenaded us and swore to us his undying love and devotion. That's when I'd swoop Mrs. Avadacian up in my arms and waltz her across the floor. We took turns leading as our man crooned, "Love Me Tender." And he did, every Wednesday morning for all the Wednesdays that Mrs. Avadacian had left. And that was a story that was submitted by Joy Kersey. Well, that's it for this month's Reading Railroader. I hope you enjoyed the stories, and I will see you next month.